gypsy heart had to do. Favoring the Union, as Uncle Matt did, he'd never have chased after Joe Shelby anyway, even if he'd had 2 good legs. Tyler felt his uncle's warm hand on his shoulder. "And if you find your papa, you stop here again on your way home and stay the night with us. Hear?" Tyler was grateful. Uncle Matt seemed to bear no hard feelings about Papa's choice in the war. "Thank you, sir," Tyler said. "And I'll take care of the money and bring back what's left over." Uncle Matt smiled. "If you spend it all, son, that's fine by me. That's what I meant it for." "Say goodbye to Cousin Clayton for me," Tyler urged, then fibbed a little. "Tell him I'll look forward to seeing him again when Papa and I stop come September." Uncle Matt, with a half salute, turned back to the pair who waited for him on the porch of Riley's farm and home store. Tyler waved to Clayton, who kept his eyes fastened on the toes of his shoes and refused to wave back. Just as when he had left his home place, Tyler didn't treat himself to any backward glances. Yet he couldn't resist a final sideways peek toward the barn, and felt a cool finger of dread tickle the back of his neck when he realized the devil dog's gaze of blue and brown was following him. Tyler hustled out of view, grateful when the row of hawthorns cut him off from the sight of Uncle Matthew's barn and store. At nightfall, in a thick grove of willows along a creek bank, Tyler decided to make his first camp. He'd been gone from home 2 days now, and reckoned he must have covered nearly 60 miles or more. But this night would be different, because it would be the first one he'd spend all alone. Now, the comfort of Clayton's bedroom, even with Clayton across the room snoring louder than an old man, seemed sweetly safe. "But aloneness is something I'd better get used to," Tyler reminded himself, since he had had more than 700 miles yet to travel. He gathered himself a few stones to make a ring in which to build a fire. Next, he cut some branches with his new knife and made himself a pallet of leafy willow twigs on which to spread his blankets. By the time everything was done, it was quite dark, and he decided to eat. Aunt Margaret had packed 2 big pieces of chicken for him that were twice as good as they had been the night before. He gnawed every bit of flesh from the bones and pitched them aside, then drank water from the tin cup she'd packed for him. She'd even included a wedge of cake, crumbly now in its paper wrapper, but still delicious. As the campfire burned down, the stars overhead loomed brighter, and the moon could be seen riding above the soft black crowns of the willows. Tyler crept to his leafy pallet and stretched himself out. He'd never slept out alone before. He'd never realized the woods were full of so many sounds. Sounds such a person never noticed when he was snug inside a cabin. Ominous sounds, as if unknown creatures were creeping close to where he lay, as if at any moment. Tyler sat up. What was that sound he just heard? Had the underbrush cracked ever so softly, as if some sort of beast were sneaking closer and closer, intending to finally leap out with a snarl and attack him? He shivered with a cold sweat as he remembered stories about bears and mountain cats that Papa used to tell. With a branch, Tyler stirred the fire to life. He saw nothing in the blackness. No pairs of eyes surrounded him like lanterns in the dark. He settled himself down again. He wondered suddenly, had Cousin Clayton decided to traipse after him? "Well, that darn mama's boy. I'll send him packing in the morning," Tyler vowed. "I have to travel fast, Clayton," he'd explain as kindly as he could. "So you'd best get on home to your mama and daddy where you belong." The sound came again. It was light, tentative. It couldn't be Clayton, who was as light-footed as a cow about to drop a calf. Tyler bolted upright. This time he threw an extra stick onto the fire so that it blazed up brightly. He heard the sound once more. It came from the opposite side of the fire. Something was coming closer, closer, through the underbrush, a few careful steps at a time. Tyler grasped the narrowest end of the branch so he'd be able to whack the creature with the stout clubbed end. He bit his lip hard, cranked his arm back, got ready to come down hard and splatter the brains of whatever beast poked its head out of the brush. The low branches of the bushes began to part. Tyler couldn't swallow. His fingers felt stiff. His palms were sweaty. His heart hammered loudly in his ears. The branches moved, rustled, separated. There, staring at him across the fire, out of one blue eye and one brown eye, stood the devil dog. "Get!" Tyler hissed, his blood running like cold spring water in his veins. Instead of moving, the dog crept near enough to snatch up the bones Tyler had pitched away. A dog could strangle mighty easy on chicken bones, Tyler knew, and at home Maggie was never allowed to eat them. But maybe that's what this beast deserved. If the dog choked and expired right here before his eyes, well, it would be God's will. But the dog had jaws like a wolf's. He pulverized the little pile of chicken bones, swallowed them down without so much as a hiccup. He advanced around the fire, his large head held low, his queer blue-brown gaze fixing Tyler with a hypnotic stare. He laid down 3 feet from the end of the boy's bed of branches. Tyler studied the dog. The dog studied Tyler. "Get on out of here," Tyler ordered in a loud voice. The dog didn't move. How had he managed to get loose? Tyler asked himself. There'd been a heavy leather collar around his neck that was hooked to a chain staked in the ground in Uncle Matt's yard. Had he somehow managed to pull his head back through that collar? It seemed unlikely, because as Tyler looked closely, he saw the collar had been fastened so tightly it had begun to wear off the hair around the dog's neck. The boy stirred. The dog raised its head. The growl that came up from deep inside the animal's chest was soft, threatening. Tyler debated. Should he bring his club down on the dog's head right now, hard as he could? Perhaps he could kill the creature with a single blow. He imagined the dog's bleeding head, the dazed look that would come into its one blue and one brown eye. But what if the dog didn't die right off? He'd have to club it again and again. Lots of times, maybe till his arm got so sore he couldn't deliver one more blow. The dog's skull might break apart, shatter like the leftover squash he and Lucas sometimes trashed on the rocks down by the creek. The dog didn't move. Tyler didn't either. Finally, he laid the stick on the ground beside him. He'd lie down himself, but would keep the dog in plain sight. He decided. After a moment, the animal closed its eyes, and Tyler was amazed at the difference. It was only a dog that made no sound, a dog that didn't remind a person much of a devil at all. Nevertheless, Tyler vowed he'd keep his